This pendant for a bezel set colored stone has white gold plates surrounding it to bead set diamonds. Begin by marking the center of the plates with dividers. Next, melt a little beeswax to cover over the white gold plates. Using the back side of a pair of tweezers, even out the beeswax and make it smooth. Then place the diamonds table side down into the beeswax. Lay the diamonds out, completely filling the plates. Using the point of your tweezers, arrange the diamonds, making them straight all the way around and evenly spaced. Once the diamonds are in place, take the point of your tweezers and mark on the side of the plates the center of each diamond. Next, use your tweezers to remove the diamonds. If a diamond is stuck in the beeswax, you can slip the point of the tweezers under the table of the stone to remove it. Then, using a round bottom graver, mark the center of each of the stones. You have three things to guide the center of the stone by: the original line we drew in the center of the plates, the marks on the center of each diamond, and the impression of the diamond's table in the wax. The next step is to drill holes on the marks that we made for the diamonds. Begin by using a 7/10 of a millimeter drill bit to drill the initial pilot hole. Because the drill bit is so small, be sure to use a lot of burr life or other type of lubricant. When drilling, brace your hand solidly to keep it from moving while drilling. Continue around the pendant, drilling a hole on each of the marks for the diamonds. Once we have all the holes drilled, use a cross burr to move any of the holes that are out of alignment. Here in the pendant bail, you can see two of the holes are off center. Place the cross burr down into the hole, and then by gently pulling to the side while it's turning, we can enlarge the hole in the direction it needs to move. Be careful to not pull too hard, as these burrs break easily. Once the holes are aligned straight, go back and re-drill them with a 1.2 millimeter drill bit. By using a smaller drill bit to begin with, we can recenter any holes and then re-drill the hole to the final size. This method makes it easier to make certain that the holes are centered and evenly spaced. Once all the holes are drilled, remove the pendant from the jet set, and using a bud-shaped burr, clean the back side of the holes, creating an azure. This will allow more light into the diamonds and also make it easier to clean any dirt that gets behind the stones. Polish with a bristle brush, and the drilling process is finished. The next step is to cut the seats for the stones. Begin the cutting process with a small bud burr to remove the bulk of the metal. Once the hole is close to the side of the stone, finish cutting the seat with a setting burr that is one size smaller than the stones being set. These stones are 2 millimeters in diameter. The 1.9 millimeter burr is not quite small enough, so a 1.7 millimeter burr is used to cut the seat. By cutting the seat smaller than the diamond, allows us to undercut the final seat, giving us more metal to form the beads. Be certain to cut all the seats to the same depth. Carefully watch the line cut by the burr for the seat and make certain they are all the same depth for each of the diamonds. Continue around the pendant until you have the seat cut for each of the stones. Before setting the diamonds, rough out the bright cut in the metal. Doing as much of the cutting as possible before setting the stones decreases the chance of chipping them. Begin cutting the metal between the diamonds. With a heart burr held perpendicular to the metal, cut a line down the center of the diamond seats, cutting to the depth of the seat. I'm using a modified heart burr, which was ground with a grinding wheel, removing the point of the heart burr. After cutting between the diamonds, begin to rough out the bright cut along the sides of the pendant. Using a heart burr, cut at a 45-degree angle into the metal. Holding the flex shaft securely in your hand, bracing your thumb against the ring clamp, and drawing your fingers closed, pulling the burr towards your thumb, will give you excellent control over the burr. Continue around the outside of the pendant, roughing out the bright cut. You want the surface of the cut to go from the top edge of the metal on a 45-degree angle down to the line you've cut for the seat. You do not want to cut below the seat line because you do not want the bright cut to be deeper than the girdles of the stone. On the inside edge against the bezel, there is not enough room to use the heart burr, so a knife edge burr is used to cut the bright cut along the bezel. All of this cutting results in forming a little triangular shaped piece of metal between each stone to form our beads with. At this point, our bright cut is all roughed out. Next, clean up the bright cut using a polished number 40 flat bottom graver. Clean any excess metal that's between the beads. Then skim over the metal to clean the bright cut and to remove the lines left by the burr. We don't want to risk chipping a stone by cleaning this up after the stones are set. The more metal we can remove now, the less chance there is of chipping a stone when it is set. Using the same graver, clean up the beads. If they are a little bigger than needed, trim the excess metal off of those beads. Be careful at the corners because the corner beads are smaller than the rest of the beads and they are easy to cut off. With a skimming action, go around the outside edge of the bright cut and just clean it up so that it's nice and smooth. Next, use a number 52 round bottom graver and cut between the stones. Clean the metal out from where we cut in between the stones, leaving a nice, smooth, even surface. Using a bristle brush with rouge, go over the cutting work to smooth and polish it. Our next step is to set the stones. Because we used a setting burr that is smaller than the stone, we need to recut the seat before setting the stones. Use a heart burr to cut the seat and cut under 2 beads with the edge of the burr. Then lift up on the burr until the burr shank is perpendicular to the surface of the metal. This results in undercutting 2 of the beads and as we lift up on the burr, we cut straight down on the opposite 2 beads. Continue cutting the seats for all of the stones. Then insert the diamond under the 2 beads that are undercut and push it into place using the back edge of our tweezers. After we get a section of diamonds into place, use a flat bottom graver behind the beads to push the bead over, locking the stones in place. When one section is tightened, repeat the process on another section of the pendant. Because the bezel is in our way, we need to use a brass pusher instead of the back end of the tweezers to push the stones down into place. Once they're in their seats, take the flat bottom graver and push the metal over, locking the stones into place. Continue this process on around the pendant, setting about 4 or 5 stones at a time. If you were to place all the diamonds in the mounting at one time, as you're tightening the beads over the diamonds, some of them could be knocked loose or fall out. So it's better to work on just a section of 4 or 5 diamonds at a time. When all the stones are set, go over the pendant and check each diamond to make sure they're tight. Our final step is to form the metal we pushed over the stones into a bead using a beading tool. Select a beading tool that will fit over the bead, but is not so large that it will hit the diamond. Place the beading tool over the bead and roll it around, rocking back and forth to shape the metal into a nice round bead. Continue this process, working each bead one at a time around the pendant, making certain that we form the metal into a bead and that each bead is in contact with both adjoining stones. After forming the metal into a bead, use a flat graver to lightly cut away any excess metal on the sides of the bead. Clean up the beads, trimming away any extra metal that the beading tool pushed off to the side of the bead and not used in forming the bead. We need to be real careful in doing this, that we do not cut the bead off and that we do not nick the bright cutting. When finished trimming the beads, use a polished flat bottom graver to skim over the bright cutting, removing any little nicks that might have been made in setting the stones. Polish the mounting and set the colored stone, and the pendant is ready to deliver to the customer.